Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Aloma.
Just want you to see the bag, you know, and the jacket. Hi, I'm Aloma. I'm an alcoholic. I use drugs too. Thank you, my angel. Oh, that Rustum, you know, he is so darn cute. I photographed him maybe 25 or 30 years ago. What was it? 27, right? You were a baby, but he was sober. I'm here. Oh, first, I want to thank Laura. You know how lucky you are that you have a secretary like her and that Jeff was before her. These are the people that I admire in this program. These are the distance runners that I admire, you know, and I'm looking down at some of them. It's not easy to take that seat and just hold on to it, Rustum, you know, and stuff, because that's maybe the only thing you can give away that particular time in your life. But you've taken your seat and you're a program of example. Laura is the dear one. I've known her, what is it, how long? 22? 20 years, you know, and from the minute that she walked into Rodeo, I met her, and she has not been here. You know what I mean? She has come, no matter we moved, we were kicked out. Let me tell you about that. You know, the meeting was there 30 years. I came there like more than that. I came there 37 years ago, you know, and we got kicked out. You know, we were the only ones that did that. It was a new group, you know. But that's okay. You've started something new here, you know, and this is good. This is the way, you know, it happens. I'm going to put my clear glasses on because my sponsor always says, you know, you got to see your eyes. She always said, I have to see your eyes. You know what that means. So there they are. I don't know, you know, but here it is. I don't know whatever I'm going to say. So I want to tell you that. I just suit up and show up, and I always say this because maybe it's a cop-out. This is like making love. You know, I know you're going to stay with me. You know what I mean? I hope you are. You know, I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I was born, I'm 65 years old. I look fabulous, I know, you know. And if you stick around, you know what I mean, you too can have a little longevity. You know, I don't know how long it's going to last from here on in. You know, and that's a good thing too, is that I hope you stick around because you're going to become the funniest person you know. You know what I mean? I found myself, I'm in the car and I'm actually laughing, you know, and thinking, you know, some crazy thing or putting something together. And that is such a big difference for me. You know, that is a big difference. Hey, cutie, how are you doing? There's another one, you know, always there, too. I knew him from his first week, right? Oh, well, anyway, he probably doesn't remember. Anyway, I didn't want to be an alcoholic. My mother was an alcoholic. And my mother left when I was about 4 and a half, and my sister was 3 and a half, and my brother was 9 months, you know, and she walked out that door. She walked out that door, you know. And she came in and out every now and then, you know, would come to, you know, the place, and we never called her mother in my household. We always called her the monkey or a tramp or something like that, something disparaging, because she was a drunk, you know, she was a barfly, you know, the gutter. That's what we talked about her. And in those days, that was bad if you were a tramp. You know what I mean? It's now we of course toss around anything. I won't say it from the podium. You know what I mean? And it actually looks good sometimes. But in those days, that wasn't. And you know, I like to talk about my mother because I think it's very important. You know, I never spoke about her in my all growing up, and I never even thought about her until I got to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Never thought about her. You know, we washed that completely out of my mind. Like I did a lot of things. I wish I could bring them back in too sometimes. So the thing is that, but when I got to AA and I was sober about 9 months, you know, it came to me that I was here. Now I had put in a lot of things in my drinking. I put in a lot in my drinking or using. You know, I always say today that my mother had the good taste to leave. You know what I mean? I just moved through my family like a Mack truck, you know, and did all the things in my drinking and using that a woman or a man alcoholic does, you know. It is a disease, but it's a disease also coupled with a behavior that takes you down. You know what I mean? And you have to constantly be making excuses for that behavior that is, you know, unexcusable. You know, that was me. That was me. But anyway, I'm sitting in the row, and I'm sort of trying to get rid of the tics. I think I was about 6 months, and I don't know about any of you. In those days, they didn't have rehabs, you know, so you detoxed right here in the rooms, you know what I mean? It didn't matter if it was Rodeo or Gramercy or Ohio, you know, you were sitting there and people used to fall over in a seizure, and then you always were grateful for the old timers because they took out a wallet and slammed it in their mouths so they wouldn't bite their tongue off, you know. Those were the good old days. I don't know, I have a sick sense of humor. You know, thank God those old timers did too, because they let me stay. So anyway, I'm trying to deal with these flying things that are all around me. I don't know if any of you had that, you know. And my sponsor said to me, Aloma, would you just ask anybody sitting next to you if those are real or not? And so that's what I did. I would hear my name too. You know, I did the kind of using that I didn't have a wet brain yet, you know, but I had what they call a bruised brain. And if you continue to use and drink, I mean, that would have been kind of, I was only 28 years old when I came in, you know what I mean? And that's the kind of using, and that's the kind of progression that this disease had with me. You know what I mean? I come from a long line of alcoholics, so naturally I moved very quickly in my disease, but not as quick as some of the young people that come in here. I met a 13-year-old this weekend that had a year, and he looked like he had been through the mill. And then I went to this convention, and I met this woman who was sitting at my table, and this woman was 75 years old, and she had just gotten sober, and she didn't have her first drink till she was 70 years old. And then she went down the tubes. She was hiding bottles and crawling on the floor. God, I loved her. I just loved her. I thought, oh my, she was a newcomer, just trying to find her way. And with a 13-year-old, hello, So I love AA. I just love AA. We're the tribe. We're the tribe. So anyway, I was thinking about my mother, and I was sitting maybe on, always the sponsors made us sit up front because they said the sickest ones sit up there because they need to be able to hear. And I would have been one of those people text-messaging if I could have ever learned it. I'm sure I couldn't have. But sitting up there, and I thought about my mother, and I had a very hard time getting sober. I was one of those people that was constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself. Constitutionally incapable. I was this way since I was a child. I believe that I had all the isms of alcoholism way before I picked up my first drug, way before I picked up my first drink. I always felt better than you or less than you. I always lied when the truth was okay. The truth would have been fine, but I lied, I couldn't be trusted. I stole, I did. It was these things were just a part of my nature, and yet I was a sweet person. You know what I mean? I really was a sweet person, but I had all these isms. And I believe the one that I like to talk about too with you is this destructiveness that began early, this destructiveness. And one of the things that Alcoholics Anonymous, through these steps, through a power greater than yourself, is able to amend to yourself the self-destructiveness that we've got going for us. I believe that was one of my hardest, the hardest wreckage of my soul to let go of, and I got allowed to do that. I no longer have to completely destroy myself so I can start over again. And I try to talk to the women I sponsor about that because it's innately there. It's innately there, and around here, those old timers thought we could win. You know what I mean? We could win. We were winners by sitting in front. We were winners by just getting a day in. You were a winner. Don't ever forget that, Aloma, they'd say. You are a winner today, And of course, I could barely hear, what they were saying. And I used to sit on my hands because they were shaking so much. But anyway, I thought about my mother, and I thought, well, if I'm going to get to stay sober, if I'm going to get to stay here, then I got to put a piece of forgiveness in for this woman. Because if I'm going to let myself, it be okay with everything that I did, that got me here, and all the drinking and using and all the stuff, then I have to realize that she was an alcoholic, and she absolutely had to do what she had to do, as I did, as I did. My mother died of a wet brain. She never got a program, and she didn't recognize any of her children when my brother finally found her. But that's the disease of alcoholism, and that could be me, a day at a time. I don't have to drink. Someone said it tonight at the birthday. Anyway, I was trouble in River City, when I was a kid. I ran away from home at 12 years old. I got locked up, spent a lot of time in juvenile hall and then in Norwalk State. By the time I was 14 years old, I know I don't look it, but I spent most of my time locked up in isolation because of the kind of things. You said go left and I went right. You said to four corner the beds, the sheets on the bed, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, because one of the things that I found out is that this rebellion stalked my every step, stalked my every step. I was lucky to be able to get out of there, and I met my first husband, who was the local James Dean. He was cute but insane, and I met him at the playground, and I had 2 children by the time I was 16. So, you know, you would have said, you know, I believe that there's a power greater than anything that absolutely adores me and is willing to open up the universe to me at any given moment if I allow that. And at that point, I was given some breaks that even though I had these 2 babies, I had gotten very beautiful. You know, that was another thing too. I used to look at my back. This is how self-obsessed and how self-orientated I was, and I'd think, oh, my back is beautiful, and maybe if I walk into rooms backwards, people will love me, you know? I mean, I told that to my sponsor thinking she would shed a tear over that, and she said, can you see about the level of self-obsession you have, you know? Anyway, she was mean and cruel, like they are, and they're still like that if you have a good one, you know? So the thing of it is that I was able to, first interview I went on was for the top designer in the United States, and I was able to get, like, from a girl that came from very poverty. My dad was Japanese, and we couldn't even rent places in my early childhood because of the war. So I was able to get all this opportunity, working for the designer, going to New York, dating New York society boys, doing all of those things that I thought was going to make me all right, that I was not going to be the monkey or a tramp. You know, I was not going to be that. You know, I was going up. But you see, I'm an alcoholic, and this is a disease, and this is a progressive disease. And at that time, at 17 years old, 17 and a half, I picked up my first drink. It was champagne, and you sure couldn't be an alcoholic if it was champagne, right? And I started speed. You know, speed was my favorite, and if you coupled that, of course, with alcohol, you could go a long ways. And I did. And some of the times I wished I had just passed out. You know what I mean? It's those people that keep moving. You know what I mean? They just keep moving, and they keep doing one more thing that is, you know, you've got to explain the day after. So that part of my life, you know, was like, had opened up. I married that second husband. And yet this is a disease that was already affecting 15 people in my life, 15 people in my life. It's affecting the presser that the designer is fitting the clothes on. He's fitting the clothes on me, and he's getting yelled up when I'm late, getting yelled at. Do you know what I'm saying? And the designer didn't yell at me, you know, and I'm already not showing up at places. You know, I am late for shows. You know, these people work very hard, you know, to put this together, and there they are waiting for me to show up. And I am coming to in a wonderful apartment off Fifth Avenue with the maid bringing me tea. But, you know, that was very sick, you know. I mean, that's part of the 15, those people that suffered, and the other models that had to fit in for me, you know, and that's I'm only 17 and a half, 18 years old. I have not even moved ahead yet. The second husband was a nice Jewish guy. I love Jewish men. It's a disease unto itself. And the thing of it is and he was on the same path as me. He wasn't an alcoholic, but he was the perfect Al-Anon. Because if you're an addict like I am, if you're an alcoholic like I am, you need care. You know, you really need care. And I was smart enough to know I was not going the distance. You know, I needed a lot of backup, a lot of care, money, you know, property, prestige, you know. And then I was going to be all right. And all of that began to happen as this disease progressed, as I began to go into blackouts, as I started the mental institutions again, you know, as I drove with those kids in the car, you know, their ears were back, their hair was back, you know what I mean, and I'm driving with fire coming out of my wheels through the canyons, you know, completely loaded. I mean, I did a few good things. I was in the PTA, and I also was a Girl Scout leader. You know, I wanted to be good. I wanted to be good. I really wanted to be good, you know. I kept trying to get up earlier and earlier so that maybe I could make up for the stuff I was doing. You know, at 4 o'clock in the morning making pancakes, you know, trying to, you know, impress that husband. And one more time, you know, that look on those people's faces. Wow, you know, especially his face. You know, when he'd ask me where the car was, and I'd look at him like, how can you talk to me about the car? It's down a cliff. I hadn't hit the house. You know, that's the worst thing. If you're still using out there, do not live in the hills. It is very risky theater. You know, some of you know that, you know. I don't know how I made it. And how I didn't take more people down. You know, I was a person who drove and always loved driving loaded. You know, I'd stop the car and get the kids out, and a shaker of martinis would fall out of the seat. You know, and you know the insanity of saying every day I'm not going to do this. Every day I'm not going to get loaded. Every day I'm not going to drink. You know, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to take the pills. I'm not going to shoot any morphine. I'm not seeing that girlfriend of mine again. You know, every day I'd say these kind of things. You know how we do. You know, you promise and stuff. And every day I did it. You know, and I knew at the end. In I knew before that. You know how we know. I knew I was an alcoholic. It was just how far I could hold on and keep using, you know, before they took me away, you know. And also the kind of uselessness and shame that comes down with that. I don't know about any of you. I don't have your story. Someday I'll get to hear it when you're up here. But the shame, because you know. And by the time I had the second overdose and they had put all the needles and, you know, things to save my life and trying to start my heart again and, you know, trying to keep me alive. And I'm out of my body and I'm looking down and I'm watching them. You know, I'm watching them and I just want them to let me go. They shoot horses, don't they? You know what I mean? I was a crippled. I wasn't making it, you know, and if you were around me, you suffered. And, you know, it was not my destiny. My destiny was to be here. My destiny was to get sober. And after a year in that mental institution, I came out and I thought if I only drank, that things, oh, I have to tell you about the mental institution though. That was great. And when you serve a year there, it's really interesting, you know, because you get to know everybody, you know, and it was like, you know, we did the Thorazine shuffling down the, you know, with our cigarettes in our hand. Medication, and you're running like this to get lit. Of course, that medication was awful. You know, with Thorazine and Stelazine and Mineral. Oh, how boring, you know what I mean? You couldn't get a high off that. Anyway, I came to this program because a couple of my friends had come here. I'd come here once. I saw it on television, and I went to one meeting, and I thought, I had seen all these old movies, and I thought I was going to be like this Helen Morgan laying on a piano, you know, and singing, you know, The Man That Got Away. I don't know why that came to me, you know. But anyway, I did that once at a meeting, and I thought, well, this might be okay if I could chic these people up, you know what I mean? The illusion, the grandiosity. The grandiosity, you know, that if I could chic these people up. Meanwhile, I hadn't been chic in a few years, honey. You know, no one wanted me to have me there. It's lucky my husband had such a good reputation in the business that he was in, and they just shuddered if they knew I were coming, you know what I mean? Because I was the kind of person that went into your house and started listening to your music and playing the same song over and over and over again, when at the dinner party they were all eating, you know? You know how that is. But Joan decided to get sober, and she decided to get sober, and she decided Marvin should get sober. And we proceeded to come to AA because we met someone, Billy, and he started taking us. Well, Joan and I thought to ourselves, we'll go, you know, and maybe we should give up the drinking. The dog was looking good at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, and I was crawling up those stairs myself, you know, and coming downstairs naked, you know. My ex-husband said once, naked came the lunch, you know. He had a very big film star at our house for lunch, and I walked down those staircases totally naked, you know. It's surprising that this man talks to me today, you know, that he has become, and I'm going to jump in and, how are we doing, Laura? How am I? Oh, 9:11. Okay, what time am I supposed to get off? Huh? Oh, I have time. Okay, I'm sorry. He's falling asleep. Is it that boring? No. All right. I don't have to speed talk. I'm so happy. Anyway, the thing is, so Joan and I decided we'll just smoke grass, and we need to really get into these meetings. We need to discuss this. You know what I mean? And so we would leave the meeting, and we'd go to a restaurant, and we'd sit there loaded, and then drive home. And then Joan decided to quit grass. And I quit Joan. You know, it was like that. There was no question who was going. You know what I mean? She had gone too far. Now, I loved her as a person. I loved that she carried her pills and her drugs with her bag. Even in her house, she went upstairs and downstairs with her handbag. You know what I mean? But she had really gone too far. And I proceeded to continue on until I could no longer hear, and I could no longer talk, and I had gone into a piece of catatonia that didn't look one more time that I was going to come out. And this husband of mine, he was calling the hospital to come up and to pick me up. And the doctors had said, you know, this woman will never be okay. You know, she will continue to she's a manic depressant, she's schizophrenic, and she will continue to deteriorate, and ultimately you're going to have to lock her permanently up. Well, you can see this bitch is still here, you know. Yeah, they didn't know, you know what I mean? They really didn't know. We're very resilient. You know what I mean? That's what I found out here. You know, you go to an Architects of Adversity meeting and they're crazy. All of us were just crazy, and they're still crazy. The Bliss is crazy. All these, I see these, you all coming in now, you know. But that's what they did. They mixed us all together in those days, you know. They didn't say you were manic, depressant, schizophrenic. They said you were drunk and sit down and shut up. If you could talk, you would have said something, but I couldn't talk. I was just doing what they said. I just wanted to be at peace and stop the screaming that was going on in my head. The screaming that was going on in my head. And he was going to do that, and a phone call came in. And that phone call was by a decorator friend of mine. that greater friend of mine who had done some work for me and was a sweet guy, you know, and he called up and my ex-husband picked up that phone. And he said, "This is Timmy," you know, and Michael, you know, really, you know how they get those Al-Anons very down, you know, and he said, "Yeah," and he said, I'm sober 30 days. He went, "Yeah." He said, I want to come and pick up Aloma and take her to a meeting. He said, that's not a problem. You know, we're locking her up again. You know, we're locking her up again. And this time, I don't know if she's going to get out, you know. And he said, and Timmy said, "Well, let me come and get her." "What do you have to lose, Michael? Let me come and get her." Well, he had nothing to lose, really, did he? this insane person, you know, that loaded and sick. And he took me to Donald M's house. And Donald M. only had 2 years of sobriety. But, honey, we thought he had 30 years of sobriety. I thought he had 30 years of sobriety. And he threw us in the back of a station wagon. And he would drag us to meetings, to the sickest ones. You know what I mean? Down at the downtown at the General Hospital. I hope, if you're new, that you go to these places. Because my sponsor said to me, "Aloma, this is where you're going to go. You need to see this. I don't want you coming on the west side anymore. I want you going east of La Cienega." I felt, my friends, you know, but she didn't care. She said, "You hang with Donald because he's the only one that helps people like you. He's the only one that helps liars like you." Because she had met me before when I was coming around before, you know, and I did get her as a sponsor, and I got her as a sponsor because it was a nice piece of jewelry. You know what I'm saying? It was a nice piece to say, "Oh, I have a sponsor, Luann," you know? And that's who I was. That's who I was. So I started going with Donald, and then one day I was at a meeting. I had maybe a month, 30 days, and there was a little guy sitting at the end of the table. It was one of those daytime meetings. We went twice a day. We were told twice a day. And he got up. He was all purple and everything, and he was little. And he got up, and he was starting to leave, and I ran after him. And I said, "You can't leave here." You know what I mean? Because I thought, I have a real live one now, my very own, you know? I don't know if any of you relate. This guy is my friend still. His name is Peter N. And he said, "I'm just going to throw up," you know? The poor thing. I said, "You're coming with me." You know what I mean? Right after the meeting, I took him to Donald's because that's what I knew. That's what I knew. I didn't know any more. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know what you did after taking him to Donald's, but I knew Donald would know, you know? And then he met Madeline, who wanted nothing to do with us. Madeline had been Miss Norway and really still living in that illusion. She had burnt down. She had burnt down 2 houses, and she felt too good for us, you know what I mean? And Peter said to me, "She won't come with me." And so I went over and talked to her, and I realized she did know more than us, and because she knew how to play backgammon still. But anyway, we got her over to Donald's, and then we started doing that. And Donald insisted that we all speak, and he would talk to me in the morning about what I would wear that night, you know, and of course I loved that. I always loved designers, and he was an interior designer, but he did tell me what to wear, otherwise I didn't know. You know, when you're new, you know, you get up and the closet looks very overwhelming, you know. Can I do this? I can't do it, you know. Anything was a reason to kill myself in those early days, you know. In fact, I did cut my wrist at 3 months sober. That was one of the other reasons that Luann didn't want to see me at the meetings, because I had these Band-Aids on. You know, anything to get a little attention. So the thing is, what happened? Oh, then we got Jim Snyder. I just want to tell you, because I hope you get some people in your life in AA that you Velcro yourself to, that you get a little group or a best friend, and you come to these meetings together, and you compete against each other. Who's going to get there? Who's going to get a sponsor first? Who's going to read the big book first? I, of course, was not first at any of those things, you know. I couldn't read, you know. So, but anyway, Jim, we found Jim. And Jim was gay, and he had, he could not stay sober. He could not stay sober. And we're like around 6 months, and we're still trying to help Jim. And we thought if we took Jim everywhere with us, and we had him sleep on our couches and stuff and watch him, that he couldn't get out. But he always escaped, you know what I mean? And he would hit 5 parked police cars and dye his hair blonde and, you know, all that. And the great thing is that for 25 years, Jim went in and out. He went in and out. And for 25 years, we still showed up for Jim. And sometimes we'd go into that house, and there would be bottles all around the, on the floor and all. But he was such a gem. And you know, he died with 6 months of sobriety. You know, after all those years. You know, we don't know. We don't know, do we? It's like the little shift, you know, that happens. Why one person, why I'm alive. You know, I drank after 8.5 years of sobriety, when drinking had nothing to do with my life. Nothing to do with my life. I had decided to put myself in an unsafe place to feel safe, you know. I was an AA member of good standing, and a lot of people remember that. You know, I loved AA. I worked with a lot of people. I sponsored, and I was a circuit speaker. But the thing of it is that none of that in the bottom line. You got to do it if you're going to get trained here. You know, I do want to say, you know, when we have to shush and stuff, we shouldn't have to shush at this meeting. Come on, you guys. My sponsor said to me, you have no respect for anyone, Aloma. You sit down and you shut up. And she meant it. When Peter and I would start giggling, you know, she'd hit me on the head. No, she'd sit back at me on purpose. I knew it was on purpose, you know. And I remember she finally, after about, I think it was 9 or 10 months, let me come to Brentwood. And at Brentwood then, I don't know if any of you have been there, but they had these long lines with the sponsors. They were like, you know, just sort of fabulous things. You had to wait in line for your turn because they sponsored maybe 10, 15 people, you know. And I thought, I'm not doing this. I've had it. Who do they think they are? Don't they know who I am? And very upset about the whole thing. And I leave the meeting without even saying goodbye. And I don't call her. Of course, I went insane in 2 days. I went absolutely insane. I mean, I couldn't even talk to Donald. And then so I called her. And she said, Aloma, I want to tell you one thing. She said, I don't want what you have. You want what I have. And she just hung up on me. You know, and I thought about that. But that's the way they were, you know, respect. To learn a piece of respect. You know, we're people that treaded over everyone, you know, and so it's my turn. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me. It's made me a mensch. I don't know if you know what that means in Jewish. It's a regular person. I'm nice. You know, I'm not better than you, and I'm not less than you. I'm just a person. You know what I mean? I'm there for you, you know. one of the things that I've gotten allowed to do is to learn what it means to show up, learn what it means to be a distance runner. I was a sprinter. You know, I did have my little fame and various things that I did, but I only went so far. In the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, if you stick around, you'll become a distance runner. You'll be able to have the wings of an angel, able to move through and ski on rainbows if you stick around. And there are some days that are going to take you to the bottom of your soul, you know, which I learned after I drank at 8.5 years. That I learned that this is a disease and it's a progressive disease. That you pick up that drink and that drink picks you up. You pick up that drug and that drug picks you up. And you don't know if you're going to get back. You don't have that choice. The only time you have a choice is if you stay sober. Then you have a choice about what comes down in your family. That wonderful girl who took her birthday cake, who decided no matter what tonight, no matter what happened to her, that drinking and using wasn't going to make it better. And I can tell you from my own experience that it didn't make it better. For that second that it went down, I realized why it had worked. Only for a second. And then it took me under. I started vomiting and from every orifice of my body, because I also have the allergy to alcohol, the allergy to this disease. And when you don't drink, you think, oh, that's going to be okay, you know what I mean? And I'll be just like fresh and new and all that. And it doesn't, maybe it works for some people that way. And for me, it didn't. I was in the obsession to use for a year, the obsession. You know, battling that. You guys know what I'm talking about. Every day wanting to either kill myself or or use, you know. I was given the gift. And everything that happened to me that I thought drinking and using it was worth that. My son going to prison, my son trying to hang himself, all 3 of my kids ending up to be drug addicts, and all the things, you know, the failed romances, the stuff that the punishment didn't fit the crime. Okay, a minute or 3 minutes? 2 minutes. Oh, all right. I wanted to tell you about my son fast. My son spent most of his life in prisons and locked up. My son is one of the most gorgeous people you've ever seen in your life, you know. He was last sentenced to a 3-strike for a violent crime that he committed when he was 16, because they couldn't prove that he had committed this last crime, which he didn't. He was served 14 years, and then he was sent to a Tiscadero. And in a Tiscadero, they were never going to let any of these people, there were 300 of them, go. We went to court. We only had a public defender because I didn't have enough money to do that. And we went to court, and we did this case. It was a 3-month case where they tried him. And before Thanksgiving, I thought, no one, it's a 1 out of a million that this could go his way, 1 out of a million. I was only afraid, and he talked to me and he said, it's all right if it doesn't happen. You know, they put everybody on there. They put me up and all the things that I had done to him, and the abuses that had come down, and that even one of my best friends got up and I said, you say whatever you need to say, tell the truth, because I want him to come out. I want that to happen for him. And she said I was passed out on the bed, and I had left him on street corners, and therefore, but the thing of it is that this DA didn't know Alcoholics Anonymous. She didn't know what happens to us. And every day I went to court, every day dressed to the nines. Every day I sat in the front row, and every day lots of you came with me. Lots of the public defenders came down and sat that were on the program. You know, we've got buddies. We have a tribe. On the day before Thanksgiving, they went to how do you say, for the verdict. And they said, we don't have it. So I said, it's over, it's over, it's over. They're not gonna, surely they would have let him out as a Thanksgiving present. When we came back after a week, they took only an hour and they signed the papers for his release. They acquitted him of all those charges that he had put in. And they, when the DA, who was, her reputation was hanging on this, asked this jury, why? Why? We put up a case. We showed that this person was going to commit crimes again and again, and that he was mentally disturbed. And the jury said to her, we saw this woman come in every day. She sat down in the front, and she sat there quietly, you know, and she just sat there, and they said all these things, and she came back, and she sat there. And we saw that this woman had changed. This woman had changed. And if this woman had changed, maybe we're going to give this guy, we're going to believe that this guy had changed too. And they signed those papers. You know, he's all right today. He's been out for 2.5 years. He's got work. He's engaged. He's sober. And I love you all. Keep coming back.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.